Hey guys, and welcome back to year number 2 of our Miami Marlins rebuild in MLB The Show 18. And we've gotten into the offseason, though we haven't done anything just yet. So before we get started on anything, I did want to jump into the budget here, the budget tab or the budget screen. Now, I'm a little unsure still on how to read this or what necessarily everything means. Like for instance, the player salaries, it says 123K. But I know it's on the screen, but I know, for instance, that everyone on a contract right now for the 2019 season is at 3 million. So that's just an example of what I'm a little confused about. So if anybody knows how to read the screen very well or understands what's going on here exactly, feel free to let me know in the comments below. That would be super helpful, and really clear things up for me. Another thing, the competitive balance tax, the threshold is 157 million for 2019. I think that's the top, like where the luxury tax would come into play. I really should know this stuff by now in playing this game, but I don't. I'm unsure about it. So again, if anybody knows about that, let me know, please. But I think that's kind of like where the luxury tax would come in. So what I really wanted to do was come into this screen and just kind of set a budget for ourselves moving into this year. You know, a lot of guys are going to be due raises, though not like super high, and we're really not going to go into free agency and pick up any big free agents that are going to cost a lot. So I'm thinking that we're going to probably keep a budget of around 65 million on the year, if that's possible. I'd like to stay around there, so hopefully we can do that. I think that's a good number to stick to for the year. But again, a lot of guys are still going to need to get raises. We are going to let some guys walk. We are going to trade some guys, of course, but you know, we'll get into that as we go further on. As for exclusive free agents, we only have one, who is Bobby Wilson, that platoon catcher that we picked up from the Twins. Now he's 36. He did play pretty well for us down the stretch. Gave us a little bit of power, but you know, he's not really someone that I'm looking to pay $2 million for a year to, being 36, platoon catcher. I'm just not really interested in doing that, so we are going to let him walk. We'll have to find another catcher probably for the major leagues, because I'm not really sure that we really have anyone that I feel comfortable bringing up. Maybe Nola, but you know, he does have decent power versus lefties. Depending on Holiday, who right now is going to be a platoon catcher for us at the major league level, who is better versus righties, so we may end up doing them as a platoon, at least to begin the year, but we'll kind of see as we go. But yeah, we still gotta get in here and do all the contracts and renewing them. So once I get that finished up, we'll meet back at that screen. We'll kind of go over that very briefly. So we made it through the off season, and now we are at the beginning of the regular season, opening day, and we have this 25-man roster set. We have the 40-man roster set, but I am going to go over with you guys quickly just what exactly we did in the off season. So we actually lost a few guys. We let a few guys walk. You guys know we let Wilson, the catcher, we let him test free agency. Another guy that we lost was Jumbo Diaz, who was a closing pitcher. He was trending down, and I really just didn't want to pay him what he wanted. And there were a few other, I actually have it written down here. We lost Adames, who was kind of like a depth piece at short. Campbell, who's a depth piece at third. Cloyd, who I mentioned we weren't going to keep on the roster. He was a reliever. And then one guy that we actually lost due to the fact that he was no longer interested in the contact. It's super annoying when prospects or minor league players come up and have that when we're trying to offer them a contract. Even if it's a good contract, some of them just tend to not be interested, and that just like it doesn't go away no matter what you offer them. But Lee was a 25-year-old center fielder who was an A potential, and he just wasn't interested in the contract, which was kind of annoying to see happen, because like I mentioned, it does happen a lot. So we did lose him. But on the positive side, as I turn the page over because I wrote all this down, on the positive side, we made a lot of signings. We got a couple guys in the Rule 5 draft. So for the free agent signings, we signed 2 starting pitchers who are kind of just prospects at the for the time being, in Fred Eldridge and who's the other guy? Foster. I think he's a little higher rated. Yeah, Daniel Foster. So we got those two guys. One's 18, one is 20, both B potential, high 50s, 60 overall rating right now. So, you know, they're two guys that we could look to trade, who could potentially come up and help us out at the major league level down the road a few years. We also picked up Drew Storen, who I was going to have in the bullpen, kind of take over Jumbo Diaz's role. But a couple things changed with the Rule 5 draft, which I'll get to in just a moment. But we did sign Drew Storen. I'm not pronouncing names correctly. We signed Drew Storen. We also signed Liberatore to a 2-year deal, and Bruce Rondon. You can see two of the guys that we got in the Rule 5 draft. We also signed... Who else did we sign? We signed 2 shortstops and 1 third baseman. So JJ Sanchez was a third baseman who was only 21. He had some decent attributes. I know he's only a C potential, but he was kind of just sitting there, and I was like, well, why not? We're in a good position with the team that we have right now to kind of test some of these younger guys that we see, even if their potential isn't the highest. So I took a chance on him. He definitely needs to develop a little bit more in some areas, but other areas are pretty nice for his attributes, like the clutch, hitting versus lefties, durability, fielding, reaction, some good aggressive base running too. Probably will get caught stealing a couple times though if he tests that, because he's not the fastest player. But we picked him up. We also picked up Ernie Roberts, who is a shortstop, 21. Again, someone that we're just giving a shot with. He is a D potential, so we'll kind of see if he develops more or if he tends to go down. If he starts to go down, of course we'll probably look to just move him or not offer him a contract next year. The other shortstop that we picked up was Andres Blanco, who has some decent contact. He was still trending up after last year, so I gave him a 1-year deal. He didn't really want a lot for salary, so it was a guy we could definitely look to pick up. Now we're gonna give Riddle a chance here at short, and if he struggles kind of around the middle of the year, we're probably gonna look to move him. And Blanco and Rojas could definitely platoon, as Rojas is a little bit better versus righties, and Blanco is a little bit better versus lefties. So that could work out. Again, kind of placeholders for now, if Riddle doesn't perform. Otherwise, they're both going to be bench pieces for us. But I think that does it for... I mentioned Roberts, I mentioned Sanchez. So yeah, that does it for the guys that we picked up in free agency. Actually, it's not it. It's not it. I was scrolling through to see if there was anybody else once a little bit later in the offseason when guys who weren't offered contracts show up in free agency, and there were a ton of catchers, and there was a handful that were really good catching prospects. So not only did we pick up Will Smith and have him platooning with Brian Holiday, we also picked up Sean Murphy, 24B potential, like Smith. We picked up Jake Rogers, who's 23B potential, and we picked up Miguel Amaya, who is 20 years old, A potential. So that really changed things up for me. I had a couple other guys at the catching position who were lower rated, lower potential, who were just going to kind of fill out the organizational depth. And I was going to have Nola platooning with Holiday. Wallach was going to kind of be that guy who, if we needed to bring someone else up, he could come up. And then we were going to have Miles and Banfield still developing in the minors. But we picked up these other 4 solid prospects at the catching position. Some of them we're going to use in trades, but guys like Nola and Wallach most likely won't be hitting the major leagues on this team for us, so we're going to be looking to move them as well. But a lot of depth now at catching that we can also use to potentially bring in some impact players down the line a little bit. And then the last thing for the Rule 5 draft, we brought in Parker Bridwell to kind of shore up that rotation a little bit for right now, because Aaron Blair really didn't get it done last year. So I'd like to have him in the minors. Maybe he'll develop a little bit more. But if anything, we're probably going to trade him at some point. Who else? And then Lorenzen and McHugh were just sitting there, so I was like, well, they could definitely help us in the bullpen. And none of these guys cost over $1 million in salary. So definitely, where am I going? Definitely, definitely guys that we would have or could have picked up and not have to worry about the salary or the budget or anything like that. For the rest of the roster, it's pretty much the same as the way we ended last year, with Urania, Garcia, Conley, and Smith in the starting rotation. Along with Blair, we have, where'd he go? We have Richards on the 40-man roster in the minors. We have Zeech, Steckenrider, Whitgren, Liberatore with Lorenzen and McHugh in the bullpen, and Minter as in the closing spot. Storin, Rondon, who we actually picked up too in free agency. I don't know if I mentioned that. Guerra, Guerrero, Rodriguez, all those guys are in the minors on the 40-man roster along with Hernandez. For the catchers, we have those two, and then Murphy's on the 40-man roster as backup. We got O'Brien in the minors at first, and Cooper's starting at first base in the majors. Diaz is our second baseman. Who else? Dominguez is our third baseman. We got Sanchez and Cuthbert in the minors on the 40-man roster. Riddles, as I mentioned, is starting at short for now. These two guys are going to be on the bench. Bostic's in left, platooning with Arcia. Anderson's in right. Brinson's in center. Sierra is on the bench. And we also have Gentry and Galloway on the 40-man roster as depth pieces. So that rounds out the roster and what we did in the offseason. We actually had wanted to keep the budget around $60 million, which we completely shattered that. And our budget, or our salary for all of our players right now for the season is only at $33 million. So that's really good, very low. $3 million only next year between three guys. In Anderson, who we gave a 2-year deal to, Rondon, who we gave a 2-year deal to, and the same for Liberatore. So everything's looking promising. We're still looking to develop these players. Again, we're keeping the budget low. It's definitely going to grow a little bit each year as some of our better players, gain experience and are looking for higher salaries, which is totally okay, as long as we're not still struggling, because then we might have to move on from them, or some of them, because we still need time to develop. But hopefully we can kind of push things forward a little bit this year. We are back, as I'm looking right now, in 29th overall in team rankings, so that's good to see. But hopefully we can take a good step forward this year, and really make some headway moving forward. So that does it for that. I'll pick it up at the draft, in which we have the number 1 overall pick, and yeah, I'll see you guys in just a moment. Hey guys, so we made it to the draft, but before we get into this, quick note, I know I didn't make any preseason trades this year, and it was really just because we made a lot of signings and a lot of moves in the offseason, way more than usual, and, I just didn't really think it was too necessary at the moment to make any trades. I kind of wanted to see how people performed moving into the season, but, we're still going to make trades at the trade deadline, and moving forward, I think moving forward, like if we make a ton of moves in the offseason, we may not look to make too many trades, if any at all, in the before the season actually starts during spring training, unless we really need to make one, or I have an open spot on the roster that I still need to fill, or there's an injury or something like that, although I'm trying to keep the injuries to a minimum. But I just wanted to let you guys know about that, because I know usually I do that in the videos, but I didn't this time. So we will be making some of the trade deadline, but for now, let's jump into the draft. And honestly, it wasn't that great of a draft, especially not compared to last year. Definitely a little bit worse of an outcome for this one. So the bottom 3 guys, Devin Park, who's a second baseman, 1865 potential. He's only a 52. Catcher Emilio Castilla, 22, who's a 60 potential. He's already a 67. And second baseman Dominique Salinas, who's 22, 60 potential, who's already a 63. Now, we're not going to offer contracts to those guys. Salinas and Castillo are already above their potential, so they're just going to, decline, if anything. So it's really not worth signing them. Park is, he's a D potential. I may have signed him, but, if his potential was maybe a C, but because he's 18, and he still has some room for for growth, but I really don't feel like it's necessary. We have a lot of prospects. We have a lot of guys in the system that are younger. So I don't, like I said, I don't think it's really necessary to offer him a contract just because he's only 18 years old. But the top 4 guys who we are offering deals to, first one is left fielder Brandon DeWitt, who's 23, 73 potential. He's only a 53, so he has room to grow. He's got some solid fielding, which we really need in the organization. He brings some speed to the table, which is another thing we might need. But overall, offensively, he really has a lot of developing to do before he's anything near Major League ready. And the same goes for Henry Rodriguez. Not as good of a fielder, but he brings a lot of speed to the table. A good base runner, I think. Good durability. Definitely needs to improve upon his offensive attributes. Though he is 21, he does have room to grow as he's only a 56 overall and his potential is a 73. He is a shortstop. I forget if I mentioned that. So those 2 guys, if anything, would probably turn into like bench pieces. Whether or not it's for the Marlins, I'm not really sure. That really depends on how much they develop and how quickly they develop. Moving up to the second pick we took was second baseman Frank Villa, who's 22, 88 potential. He's still a 53, so again, someone who needs a lot of developing. Not someone that we're going to see in the majors for a long time, if at all. But he's got good durability, promising in some of the fielding areas, decent speed. Needs a lot of work offensively, also in fielding. But again, he may come in handy in a trade piece, if anything, because I really don't think he's going to develop to the point where he's going to be someone that we choose to put on the Major League roster over other guys, even within 6 years, if we go that far in this rebuild. So definitely someone that we'll probably use in a trade at some point, if anything. And then the first guy that we chose in the draft, the number 1 overall pick, is right fielder Alan Midasek, who's 18, 93 potential. The bad thing about him is he's only a 47 overall right now, and he needs a ton of time to develop before he's anywhere near his potential, anywhere near Major League ready. All over, he brings good speed, but again, he needs to work on his base running aggressiveness, his stealing, all of his fielding, all of his offense. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt with that 87 durability, but that's really the main reason why I said it wasn't as good of a draft as last year. We did get some guys here with high potential, a couple guys with decent potential, but a lot of them were only, if not all of them, were in their overall 50s and 40s even for our number 1 overall pick. So kind of not as promising there. So more than likely these guys are going to be heading to to be used in a trade, if anything, like I mentioned for Villa. But yeah, that was the draft for 2019. Again, not as good as last year's, but hopefully we got some guys there that we can use in some way to help the team improve moving down the line. I did just want to go into if I can find it, the DL to show you guys who's hurt. I thought, like I mentioned in the first video that I ever posted, I think I mentioned it in that, I'm good with this game to a degree. Like I've played it a lot, but there's still some things that I'm not really sure about. I don't really know, and I'm still learning certain areas of it moving forward. One of those, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, was the budget screen, and another one is apparently injuries. Now, I thought I had injuries turned down. I'm not really sure if you can turn them off. So if anybody knows that you can, feel free to let me know about that as well. That would also be super helpful. But I thought I had them off. I don't think it stayed. I think it kind of reset because I didn't save it, maybe. But yeah, so Steckenrider was hurt earlier in the season. He's out 1 to 2 months. He'll be back relatively soon. And Brian Anderson, our big bat, who was struggling, as you can see, so far in the season before he got hurt, he's going to be out for a little while. Hopefully he'll be back before the All-Star break or around that time, definitely before the trade deadline. And Roberto Hernandez is a minor leaguer who got hurt. We had a couple other minor league injuries, but they're all back on their rosters right now. So yeah, if anybody knows about the injuries, I'm assuming it's just under the sliders that you can put it all the way down to the left and they won't really happen. If there is a way to just turn them off and I'm just not realizing it, feel free to let me know. That would be really helpful if you could. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that and make sure you knew about any major injuries on the Major League roster at least. And that does it for the draft. And yeah, we'll pick it back up at the trade deadline. Definitely be making some trades. We'll kind of go over, see if we had any all-stars. I guess see if anybody's performing well. Things like that. So I'll meet you guys back at some screen at the trade deadline in just a moment. So we made it to the trade deadline, and before we jump into anything with trades, I just want to go over a few things with you guys first really briefly. The first being our record, so our performance as a whole, which has not been the best, but again, that's to be expected. We're only in the second year of this, and you know, we're still not at that point where we're gonna see improvement in performance and on the field just yet, but we are moving in the right direction. But like I said, you know, we're not doing too well, as you can see, with the 32-75 record. My goal this year really was just to improve upon last year's record of 52 and 110. So, you know, it's pretty close. It looks like we're going to end up around there again. Whether we're going to surpass that or not is yet to be seen. But, you know, we're still on the right track in my mind. So hopefully next year we might be able to make more of a jump forward, or maybe even at the in the second half of this year. But overall, not a good year so far for the Miami Marlins. We have a few bright spots, I should say, on the team. One in particular is extra bright in JT Riddle, who, you know, I was very concerned with in his performance and if he was going to turn things around. Otherwise, I was gonna move on from him. But luckily, he's having a very nice season, as you can see. His on base is a little bit low compared with his average. So you'd like to maybe see that go up a little bit, but we're not going to be too picky because he really did turn things around so far for this season. He was our lone all-star, so he was the guy representing us in the all-star game. So not a bad year for him. His fielding is down a little bit from last year. But overall, a very nice season. And while we're on the roster screen, just a few guys of note at this point in the year. Brinson is having a bit of a down year from last year. You know, he's not really trending the way we want him to right now, but he still is trending up. He's still an A potential. I really don't think this is gonna harm his development. But if it does continue, that's when it becomes a concern. But it looks like he just took a step back this year. As you can see, his average is even further down, which it wasn't very high to begin with last year. His power's down a little bit. His RBIs are there, but you know, just not having as good of a season so far. So hopefully he can turn it back around and get back on track. I'm not worried about him just yet. Another guy is Isan Diaz, who was up earlier this year as our starting second baseman, and he really struggled. So that really was a little worrisome to see. One of the areas that I wanted to improve upon at some point was our second base depth, and as you can tell, we really don't have too much behind him. So, you know, seeing him not perform, like I said, was pretty worrisome. So that's an area that we might want to look to improve upon. So with him struggling a little bit, I called up Cuthbert, who you know, so far initially has done well in the majors this year. Not very much playing time at all, but he's performed so far. So hopefully he can you know, do better than the 207 average of last year. But you know, not necessarily expecting him to hit over 300 for his time played at the end of the year. But it's nice to see him off to that hot start. Another guy, now we move into the pitchers, is AJ Minter, who's you know, a little bit interesting with his stats. His ERA is up, his WHIP is up, but he has 17 out of 19 saves. So in 19 opportunities, he's converted 17 of them. So I'm thinking that, you know, maybe he's just allowing a lot of hits, or he's allowing a lot of guys on base, which 36 in how many innings? 27 innings. It's a bit high. You know, maybe that's the problem. Maybe he's not able to work through that, because he only does have 2 blown saves. You know, so maybe that's the issue. Maybe he's just allowing a lot of runs, even though he's converting the saves. You know, but 17 saves and I think it was 32 wins that we have so far is pretty good for not a too great of a team at the moment. So again, like Brinson, I'm not really worried about him. Just kind of, you know, hoping they can turn it around sooner than later so it doesn't end up hurting their development at all. Another guy is Whitgren, who is definitely struggling. You know, this is kind of what I expected him to do last year when he did well. And Steckenrider, who's doing well, is, you know, he wasn't doing that bad last year, but it's kind of like they're alternating and doing what I thought they were going to do last year, but they're doing it this year. So I'm a little unsure. I'm going to hold on to them, obviously, the two of them, for the time being, but you know, I'm not really sure between the two of them how they're going to continue to develop or how they're going to continue to perform, if we're going to be able to, you know, rely on them consistently for good performance in the bullpen. But you know, we'll just have to wait and see with that. But I did want to mention or show that, you know, Whitgren and Steckenrider have kind of flip-flopped there in their performance. And then the last guy I wanted to bring up was Adam Conley, who has a 6.44 ERA. Again, I kind of like Whitgren. I kind of expected him to perform this way last year, which was a nice surprise year for him. But now he's kind of fallen back to that. His whip is really high. You know, a lot of walks. I don't know. I'm probably going to move on from him as he's still trending upwards. I don't want to wait for him to trend down if I can help it. But really not what I was expecting to see from Conley this year after a surprisingly good season last year. So, you know, after we saw that, you know, there's some areas of need that we need to address that I'd like to look for in some trades. One being middle infield help, at least just some depth. It could even be a third baseman who also plays second base. You know, I'm not going to necessarily look for a strict second baseman, especially with Diaz still so young. I know his potential is trending down, but you know, in case he turns it around, I don't want to just necessarily get a second baseman to take his spot. But you know, someone that can play second base is what I'm looking for. And another thing I'm looking for is pitching help. That's really important, and I just feel like we're not getting consistent pitching, especially in the bullpen. So I really want to help, or I really want to try to really solidify this bullpen as best we can for the time being, and maybe some starting help if you know, we find something, or if we trade away Conley and we want to fill in that rotation and we don't want to bring someone up just yet, you know, something like that. But really it comes down to pitching and middle infield right now that I want to address. So yeah, I'm gonna go look for a few trades, and once I'm able to find a few that I'm interested in making, I'll meet you guys at that screen and we'll go over them in just a moment. Alright guys, so the first trade that we're going to be making is with the Tampa Bay Rays, and we're going to be receiving Daniel Robertson, who's a third baseman who also plays second and short, which was really important and really the main reason why I'm, you know, choosing him to acquire. And then also Jose Alvarado, who's a reliever who's only 23 beat potential, and he's already a 78. He's having a very solid year, had a good year last year, and had a solid year the year before. But he's someone who tends to really do well, who develops nicely. And he's so young, and he's also a lefty. So, you know, that's really nice to have for us. So it's going to be good to have him in the bullpen. And then Daniel Robertson, he's having a solid year. I'm not really sure because I haven't really had experience having him on a team just yet, but he's got decent offensive stats right here, or attributes, especially compared to the guys on our team. His discipline's there, his clutch is there, decent vision. He's a solid fielder. He's got solid speed, even though he may not be the best at stealing bases. So all the way around, he seems like a nice pickup. I'm just a little unsure about how he develops or what his tendencies are and how consistent he stays. But, you know, I do think it's a nice upgrade. He's only 25. He has a B potential, 78 overall. I do think it's a nice upgrade at second or third, as we are going to be sending over Matt Dominguez in return as part of the deal, who I just kind of want to move on from before he does too bad. Or before he starts to trend down, as he is 29. I know he's a B potential and he's not trending down just yet, but you know, I'm just a little worried. I see a few minuses there in his offensive attributes, and you know, I'd like to get a little bit younger there, and as he was just a temporary placeholder. Another guy that we're going to move on from is Tony Zeich, who really hasn't been able to perform for us. His ERA has pretty much hovered around 5, and he's trending down in both potential and overall. So I do want to move on from him before he, you know, dips a little too low in his ratings. And then the third piece that we're gonna move on from is Aaron Blair, who I've been wanting to move on for a little while now. He's 26, B potential 71. He's not doing that great in the minors, though he has turned it around more recently. But again, he never really performed for us last year in the major leagues, as you can see, and he's just not really someone that I want to necessarily hold on to. But you know, he works in this trade with Zeich and Dominguez, and we're going to be getting 2 nice pieces back in Alvarado and Robertson, so hopefully this helps us out this year as well as in the future. And yeah, we're going to move on to the second trade in just a moment. So our second trade is going to be with the Detroit Tigers for reliever Joe Jimenez, who's again a very young reliever who's only 24, B potential. He's still trending up, and he's already an 84 overall rating. He's been closing games in Detroit, so that's actually really good to see. As we know, we have someone, if Minter does continue to struggle, we can slide Jimenez over there into the closing role and know that he should be able to perform. Again, nothing's set in stone, but it's nice to have a potential backup there. He's really performing very well this year, and you know, he's, with his age and his potential and his rating right now, he is someone that I see as, again, I'm not really sure, like with Robertson and the other trade, I'm not really sure how he does continue to perform moving forward, because I haven't really had much experience with him on a team, but you know, as far as I can tell, he's going to keep it up, and right now especially, he's a very nice piece to add. I am a little bit worried because last year's ERA was at a 5, his whip was 1.5, so it is a big jump. I'm not sure if he's going to keep up this level of play. Maybe it has to do with him being in the closer's role, but you know, he's a good pickup for us, and definitely really going to help out our bullpen. The 3 guys that we're going to trade away to acquire him is our Craig Gentry, who, as you know, we picked up before the first season, just to be a placeholder. He's been in the minor leagues this year, definitely developing some power there, as you can tell. He's still developing, which is pretty interesting to see at 35. So, you know, he's not just a minor leaguer who's already at the end of his career. He could potentially help the Tigers, though I'm not really expecting him to do that. But yeah, we're going to be sending him away, along with Colin McHugh, who we got in the Rule 5 draft. Solid pitcher, still only 31, and he's trending up, but just not really doing it for us. So again, he really helps out in this trade. And we're also going to be trading away Trevor Richards, who's a starting pitcher. We brought him up last year, if you remember, and he did really well in 26 innings. He's almost a 70 B potential, still 25, but we have so many prospects, and a decent amount of them are in the upper 60s like he is, or 70s, that we can really start trading away a few of them. We just got to be careful, obviously, which ones we do move on from, because you're always worried that you're going to move on from the wrong ones, and they're going to do well, as opposed to the guys that you hold on to. But, you know, we got enough guys around him that I feel obviously comfortable moving on from him. So we're going to be moving him with McHugh and Gentry to acquire Joe Jimenez from the Tigers. Again, this one is really to shore up the bullpen, and especially shore it up moving forward into the future as well. So hopefully this really helps us out. And I should have one more trade before we move on from the deadline, so I will meet you guys at this screen again in just another moment. So for our third trade, we're going to be moving on from Adam Conley, Bruce Rondon, and Sean Murphy, and we're going to be sending them over to the Red Sox in return for Matt Barnes, Brian Johnson, and Brock Holt. Now, you guys know that we wanted to move on from Adam Conley, who really hasn't been too consistent for us, and, you know, I'd rather move on from him before he starts to decline or anything like that, as I really don't know how he's going to perform, and if he's performing well, I really don't expect him to be consistent with it. So we're going to be moving on from him along with Bruce Rondon, who we acquired via free agency at the beginning of this year. I was expecting him to make the bullpen, but with the 2 Rule 5 draft picks, he didn't. And he really just doesn't have a spot on the Major League roster for us, which he really isn't happy about. And I really don't want to be paying $1.2 million to a guy who is playing in the minors. So, you know, and he's really not doing too well in the minors. I think he had like a 5.5 ERA in AAA. So it might be better for us to move on from him as well. And then the third piece is going to be Sean Murphy, who is one of the 4 catchers we picked up in the offseason. He is the lowest rated of the 4, being 24, and he dropped down to a C potential. So, you know, definitely the one guy out of the 4 of them that we'd like to move on from first, or move on from out of any of them. You know, it's definitely going to be him right now. So he works in this trade. So we're going to be getting back Brock Holt, who is kind of going to take, I guess, Gentry's spot on the roster. He probably will be in the majors since he is performing well, and we might send someone down. I'm not really sure who just yet, but we are going to be picking up Holt, who plays a lot of positions. You know, a good player, a good all-around player. So not a bad pickup for our team right now. He definitely isn't someone that we're going to be looking to hold on to too far into the future. So it definitely works. Another guy that we're going to be getting is Matt Barnes, a reliever who's only 28. He is a C potential, but he's still trending upward. He's still performing. I don't expect him to perform at this level moving forward, but you know, if he can give us a 3 ERA and kind of meet halfway between these two, that'd be really nice to see. But for this year, of course, he's doing really well, so pretty excited to get him in the bullpen along with Jimenez and Alvarado especially. And then the last guy that we're going to be picking up is Brian Johnson, who's 28 C potential, 74 overall starting pitcher. Again, we're not looking to pick up someone who's going to be there for a long time, but he does fit in nicely for now to fill out that rotation, and he is in the middle of a very nice year for him, which he actually performed pretty well last year too. I'm not sure if he was in a starting role. He only started 10 games last year, so no, not full-time, but you know, he's not starting this year either. I didn't notice that. But, you know, we'll still pick him up. If anything, we can have him in the bullpen too, since he's performing so well, and try to call up one of our prospects. But that's going to do it for the third trade. Really hoping this one works out for us. This one isn't as future oriented for us, but definitely really helps out right now, and we're moving on from some pieces that we definitely wanted to move on from. So yeah, like I said, that does it for the third trade. More than likely, that'll be all the trades made. Of course, if we make another one, I'll let you guys know, but as far as I can tell, we're not going to, and if that's the case, I will of course meet you guys back at the roster screen at the end of the year. I'm just going to go in here and fix up the roster a little bit, but I will meet you guys at the end of the regular season. Alright guys, so we made it to the end of the year, and we finished going 49 and 113, which wasn't quite as good as what we finished with last year when we were 52 and 110. So another overall bad season for us, but again, that was to be expected. We're still in the, you know, stages of a rebuild where we're not expecting to necessarily get better. So, you know, hopefully next year we can start to push up a little bit in the team rankings, in the win totals, and all that stuff, and maybe start trending in the right direction. Now, one thing I want to bring up is at the trade deadline, we started to pick up some solid major league players, not necessarily impact players, but, you know, we weren't solely targeting prospects or guys that could just fill in for half a year in a platoon role. So, you know, that's definitely something that I want to continue with in the next year or two, at least until we are getting a little bit better, until some of the prospects develop some more. Because I don't necessarily want to go after too many impact players or big name free agents until we're in a position where we're contending for a playoff spot. So definitely moving forward in the next year or two, we want to start targeting some major league ready players, preferably younger guys with higher potential, if possible, and you know, really start to help this team turn that corner a little bit. Even though we're still waiting for a lot of the prospects to develop, we kind of want to improve upon this win total and really start trending in the right direction. The one positive from the year that we did have is that we moved back up into 29th overall ranked team. The Orioles have gone back down to the 30th, and you know, that's just a little bit of a positive note to end on. But to go into all the teams in each division, we got the Phillies winning the NL East, we got the Brewers in the Central and the Dodgers in the West. The Nationals and the Rockies will be taking on each other in the wild card game. In the AL, we have the Red Sox, the Indians, and the Angels winning their respective divisions, and then we have the Astros and the Yankees taking each other on in the AL wild card game. And real quickly, I want to jump into the awards. I know this is something that really interests me. I always like to come in and just see who won which awards, see which guys performed well. So I'm assuming you guys would like to see that too. And in case you do want to see that, I'm going to go through it. I'm not sure if I really ever did it before in any video. I am going a little bit fast here, but feel free to pause it. I just don't want to take up too much time and make the video too long. But yeah, there was one thing that I noticed in the AL with Shohei Ohtani. I don't think I showed the awards in the last video, though I looked at them myself. But as you can see, he's won the Rookie of the Year 2 times in a row. One as DH last year and one as starting pitcher this year. Now, I don't know if that's just a mistake. It's very confusing. I'm assuming it's because of his injuries and he switched over to strictly a position player at the end of the year in real life. So I don't know if they accidentally left that there or what went on, but really confusing. We're going to jump into the roster next, obviously, but I'll show you guys that there's actually 2 Shohei Ohtanis on the Angels, which is kind of weird, but I'm assuming it's just a mistake. It really confused me when I saw it. But as you can see, there's Shohei Ohtani, the starting pitcher, who is the actual Shohei Ohtani, as you can tell by the character and what he looks like, who's a starting pitcher. And then Shohei Ohtani, number 2, who's a left fielder, plays DH. Again, not sure what's going on here, but you know, I'm assuming it's just a mistake. But there's going to be 2 Shohei Ohtanis going on in this franchise, which is confusing. Anyway, back to our roster with the Miami Marlins. Like any team with any year, we had some better players. We had some players with down years. We had a few guys, like I mentioned at the All-Star break, that were struggling a little bit, especially as compared to last year. We had a couple guys who had nice seasons or surprising seasons for us. But we're going to go into them and just briefly go over what everybody did on the 40-man roster. We had to start with the starting pitchers. We had Caleb Smith, who did not perform very well this year. He was in the rotation the entire year, but you know, he had a 6 ERA, a WHIP of almost 1.6 in 150 innings. So definitely moving into next year, we're probably going to look to not have him in the rotation. Maybe a Lopez or an Alcantara, who I do want to move on to the 40-man roster before the start of next year. Maybe one of them will take over that spot in the rotation over Caleb Smith. As for Brian Johnson, we picked him up from the Red Sox. He didn't perform as well for us, but a lot of the guys that we picked up were having better years than you should expect from them, even though you should expect decent years from them. But still, they still all ended the year doing fairly well, doing as expected. Definitely not bad years by any of them. Just didn't really keep up that very, very high level of play that they had for their previous teams, which was kind of to be expected for most of them. But as for Brian Johnson, he did fairly well. He ended the year with a 3.40 ERA and 120 innings. Very solid year for him. Yarlin Garcia, we'd like to see him improve even more, but it's nice to see him drop down that ERA from last year's over an entire run. His whip is still a bit high, but hopefully he can take this, because it's similar to what he did when he first came up, and start to improve upon it and build off of this season, and really start to develop and perform a little bit better moving forward. Of course, with the losses, we can't really blame it on any of these starters, as the position players as well, the team around them, are not performing that great either at this point. So kind of ignore the high loss totals for these guys. Parker Bridwell did very nicely with a 3.15 ERA, 190 innings pitched. I can't remember if I went through the league leaders. I was going to. I might have to go back there, because he was our only representative in the leaderboards in 2 categories. But he had a very nice season, very surprising season. But overall, like I said, a very nice season for someone that we picked up in the Rule 5 draft. Jose Urena, a little bit worse than last year, but kind of along the lines that you'd expect to see from him. Definitely performing as maybe a number 4 or 5 starter, but obviously he's a number 1 or 2 starter for us. Not a bad year for him. I'm not saying it's a bad year, just that he did a little bit worse than last year. So hopefully he can turn it around just a little bit. In the bullpen, we have Paco Rodriguez down here, who didn't really pitch that much and didn't do too well. Michael Lorenzen, another Rule 5 draft pick. He did pretty well for us, solid. He is trending down, so we might move on from him in the next season. Eliezer Hernandez, he came up in September and he pitched very well. I'm definitely going to look to try to get him in the major league roster, I should say, in the next season, if he continues to develop and perform the way he's performing. With a 3 ERA in 27 innings, obviously the whip is just a little bit high, but I'm not too worried about that right now. Javi Guerra didn't pitch for us this year. Liberatore, he brought his ERA down from what it was at the trade deadline, so he performed nicely to finish the year, 3.58 ERA. His whip, again, is a little bit high. I'd like to see it at least more around 1.3 for these guys, but yeah, not a bad year by Liberatore at all. Tyrone Guerrero came up and he pitched 7 scoreless innings, so it was a nice bounce back year for him in September from last year, so he might make the major league roster next year as well. Whitgren, as we know, was struggling. I can't remember if that was his ERA when he was last in the majors, but I sent him down hoping he can just kind of like fine-tune some stuff, maybe develop a little bit better when he comes up. Maybe next year he'll perform a little bit closer to what he did in 2018. Steckenrider had a nice year. ERA is up by 4, kind of what we expected to see from him. So 3.88 ERA in 62 innings. He went 4-4. Alvarado, again, like I mentioned with Johnson, the guys that we picked up at the deadline, their stats, or their stats shot up a little bit, where we were, wouldn't necessarily want them to, but they still had very nice seasons. He was doing very, very well on the Tampa Bay Rays, so we weren't really expecting him or any of the other guys to really stay consistent with that level of play, but they all still, like Alvarado did, have very nice seasons. 2.79 ERA in 67 innings. The saves were mostly for the Rays. Matt Barnes went 2-2, 78 innings, 3.23 ERA. Nice amount of strikeouts, 82 in 78 innings. A good whip, so he had a nice year. And Joe Jimenez, 3.18 ERA in 45 innings. Again, those saves came for the Detroit Tigers, but again, very nice year for Jimenez as well. So I'm pretty excited to see some of these guys in the bullpen moving forward. Storen, very bad year when he was up in the majors for a little bit. So, we're probably not going to have him back. Minter, I can't remember. No, his ERA was in the 5s, I think, at the deadline. So it did come back down a little bit. His whip came down a little bit. He had 31 saves and I think, 4 blown saves. So he did better in that department. We'd like to see him continue to to bring that ERA and that WHIP down a little bit. But he is still developing, so it's promising to see that. As long as he's not trending downward or declining at all, I'm okay with what he's doing. Smith had a nice year. He struggled in the first 2 months or so, but he came back up with his average. He had 3 homers, 47 hits. A nice on base for his amount of playing time. Holiday did kind of what we expected to see from him. 87 hits, 3 homers, hit 236. Nice on base as well. Then we have Cooper at first base, who improved upon last year with 18 homers, hit 240. On base went up a little bit too. Not someone that we're going to have too far into the future, but again, kind of just a placeholder for the time being, at least until Diaz can improve a little bit more. Isan Diaz, though, as we know, he struggled a little bit. I think he brought his average up from what it was when we sent him down in September, but hopefully he can turn this back around and get back on track moving forward. Robertson struggled a little bit more with us than he did on the Rays, but I'm not really worried. It's gonna be good to see him in a full year and see how he performs. But again, like some of the other guys that we picked up, I'm pretty excited to see what he can do for us over the course of a full season. Cuthbert performed nicely in the time that he played, a lot more along the lines that I expected to see from him than the 207 average. A nice on base as well. JT Riddle continued to perform nicely, dropped a little bit, but not a bad year for Riddle. A very nice improvement upon last year. So he's still going to be in the plans moving forward for now. Rojas, not as good as last year, obviously. It would have been hard to replicate that, but he definitely performed well in the bench role. He's still trending up. Definitely someone that we want to keep on the bench if we can moving forward. Blanco, on the other hand, we're probably going to move on from him. He gave us a little bit of pop off the bench, but he is trending down, and he didn't really do as well in the average department with that 76 contact than we expected to see. Moving into the outfield, Bostick provided us with some power, but not a good year necessarily overall. He's kind of going to be our depth piece, at least for right now, from what I can tell. Brinson, he brought his stats up a little bit more, but again, we'd like to see him get back on track a little bit more and definitely develop and improve and build upon what he's done in the past in the coming year. Sierra struggled a little bit, so we sent him down, but he really doesn't have any power, so we'd really like to see that contact go up a little bit. He's a decent fielder, but again, we really want to see that contact and that average go up if he's going to be in the major leagues. Then we have the right fielders in Arcia, who had a nice year, a little bit better than last, so that was good to see. He's still trending up. 11 homers. He hit 250. Galloway, not as good as last year, but he did do solid off the bench for us. Hit about 250. 61 hits. So that was nice to see. Holt came over. We're probably going to move on from him moving forward. He is trending down a bit. But he did nicely. Again, didn't continue as the level of play that he had been performing at on the Red Sox, but he did still finish the year with a nice line here, a nice stat line. 82 hits, 10 homers, hit 280. Decent on base. And that leaves Brian Anderson, who really turned things around from when he was struggling before he got injured. 15 homers, 95 hits. He hit 271 with an on base close to 350. So that was nice to see from him. One thing I want to check is his fielding, which was about the same as it was last year. So hopefully he can improve upon that a little bit too. But overall, some promising years from some of these guys. Some guys that we're going to move on from. Some guys who kind of took a step back that we can hope can get back on track. Not the best year as a team, obviously. Pretty bad one, to be honest. But hopefully we can turn things around moving forward. Now, I'm not sure if... I don't know why I can't remember, but I'm not sure if I went through the league leaders here real quickly. Because, again, this is something that I always like to look at. So I'm going to go through here. If you guys want to pause it and take a look at who who led the league in what category and all that, feel free to, like I said, pause it and check this out. The two categories I think that Parker Bridwell were in the leaderboards in was actually home runs allowed. He was number 11th. He was 11th, excuse me, with 19 homers in 190 innings, which is pretty good. And he also was there in walks allowed. He was 10th, or tied for 9th with Samardzija with only 50, which again was pretty good. And again, he did very well for someone that we picked up in the Rule 5 draft. You know, a very nice season by him. So pretty happy with what he gave us. You know, we really couldn't have expected much more from him. Hopefully he actually improves moving forward, because he is still a B potential. He is still trending up, I think, and he's not really that old either. So we do, like I said, have some promising players. We're still waiting on some of the prospects to develop, and you know, we're going to try to target some more major league ready players, if not for right now, impact or bigger named free agents. So we are going to look to turn the corner a little bit more moving forward. And to finish off the year, we're gonna go into the playoffs here and see who comes out on top. We got the Colorado Rockies moving into the NLDS and the Houston Astros moving into the ALDS. And we'll see who wins those series. We have Philly against the Dodgers in the NLCS and the Angels against the Boston Red Sox in the ALCS. And let's see who comes out on top. We got Boston and the Dodgers. Last year was the Yankees and the Cubs. So the Dodgers are up 2-0. This is a very likely scenario, by the way, for the World Series this year. We know Boston's already in there. They just won last night. I know it's going to be a little bit different when the video comes out, but very possible. The Dodgers have defeated the Red Sox in the 2019 World Series. So there you have it. The Dodgers have won. They've broken their drought. They've won their championship, and the Red Sox came up just short. Hopefully, you know, I'm kind of rooting for the Red Sox this year. You know, if you guys want to let me know who you're rooting for, feel free to leave that in the comments. Just another thing to discuss. Kind of hoping the Brewers get there though. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we're gonna be moving into year 3, hopefully turning the corner, like I said, and getting this team a little bit back on track. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this, of course, and if you're interested in seeing more content, feel free to subscribe. But yeah, I hope you guys are all doing well, and I will see you guys soon in the next video.